There are moments in life when the smallest actions carry the deepest meaning. A handful of salt, 4 quiet corners, 1 mindful evening. At first it sounds too simple to matter. Yet wisdom has always lived inside simple things because truth rarely arrives with noise. It arrives in silence, in awareness, in the sacred pause between what we ignore and what we finally choose to see. As April 23rd approaches, many people will pass through the day as they pass through every other day, distracted by the endless movement of the world. They will wake, speak, worry, rush, and sleep without ever noticing that their home has been holding the weight of their unseen burdens. Every room remembers. Every wall listens, every corner quietly gathers what the heart has been unable to release. The sadness not spoken, the fear not understood, the tension carried from one sunrise into the next. These things do not always leave when we ask them to. Sometimes they settle into the spaces we never look at. The corners of a home are often forgotten. People decorate the center of a room. They clean what is visible. They arrange what guests can see. But the corners remain untouched, silent witnesses to the energy of daily life. And because they are neglected, they become places where heaviness can linger. Not because the corner itself holds power, but because neglected spaces often reflect neglected parts of the spirit. What we avoid outside often mirrors what we avoid within. Salt has long been seen as a symbol of purification, not because it performs magic, but because it reminds us of intention. Salt preserves. Salt protects. Salt absorbs. It asks nothing, yet it serves quietly. To place salt in the corners of your home is not merely to move your hand. It is to make a decision. It is to say, I no longer wish to let old energy remain where peace should live. It is to acknowledge that your environment affects your mind and your mind affects your life. On April 23rd, when the day begins to soften and the evening becomes still, take a small pinch of salt in your hand. Walk slowly to each corner of your home. Do not rush. This is not a task. It is a conversation with your own space. As you place the salt down, let your thoughts become clear. You do not need complicated words. Simply stand there for a moment and breathe. Feel the stillness. Recognize that you are not just changing your home. You are changing your relationship with the energy you allow around you. In the first corner, release fear. Fear often enters quietly. It sits in the mind and convinces us that tomorrow will repeat yesterday's pain. As you place the salt there, let that fear be acknowledged. You do not need to fight it. You only need to stop feeding it. In the second corner, release resentment. Old wounds can live in a home long after the moment has passed. Words spoken in anger can echo for years. Salt in this corner becomes a reminder that peace cannot enter where bitterness refuses to leave. In the third corner, release exhaustion. Many people are tired in ways sleep cannot fix. Their body rests, but their spirit remains heavy. Let that corner hold the intention that your home becomes a place that restores you, not one that silently drains you. In the fourth corner, invite gratitude, because cleansing is not only about removing what is heavy, it is also about making room for what is light. Gratitude changes the atmosphere of a room faster than any object ever could. A thankful heart can transform even an ordinary home into a peaceful sanctuary. After placing the salt, leave it there overnight. Let the home become still around it. Let the silence do its work inside you. Then the next morning, sweep or gather the salt gently and remove it from your home. As you do, imagine that what no longer belongs to you is leaving with it. Some will laugh at such a ritual because modern minds often dismiss what ancient hearts understood. But the value was never in the salt itself. The value is in the awareness it creates. Most people never pause long enough to bless the space they live in. Most people wait for life to change without ever changing the energy they live inside. Sometimes transformation does not begin with a grand decision. Sometimes it begins with a quiet hand, a humble grain of salt, and the willingness to bring peace into places that have been forgotten. And perhaps that is why this simple act matters. Because healing often begins in the corners we almost never see. Corners of the home hold hidden energy. The speech emphasizes that neglected corners symbolize stored emotions like stress, fear, and unresolved thoughts that accumulate in daily life. There are moments in human life when meaning is not found in complexity, but in simplicity that is deeply observed. The world often teaches that transformation must come through struggle, loud effort, or visible change. Yet many quiet traditions remind us that awareness itself is the beginning of all renewal. On April 23rd, a simple act is often spoken of, placing salt in the corners of one's home. To some, it may appear ordinary, even unnecessary. But to those who understand symbolism and mindfulness, it becomes a reflection of inner cleansing rather than a physical act alone. A home is not only a structure of walls and furniture. It is a living space shaped by emotions, memories, conversations, and silence. Every day, people bring their thoughts, worries, hopes, and frustrations into their surroundings. Over time, these unseen impressions feel as if they settle into the environment. Not in a physical sense that can be measured, but in a way that the mind perceives as heaviness or restlessness. The corners of rooms, often untouched and unnoticed, become symbolic of what is ignored in life. Just as dust gathers where hands do not reach, emotional weight is believed to accumulate where attention does not go. Salt, throughout human history, has held meaning beyond its physical use. It preserves, it purifies, and it protects. It has been used in rituals across cultures not because it holds mystical power, but because it represents clarity and intention. When a person takes a small amount of salt and places it deliberately in each corner of their home, the action itself becomes important. It is not the substance alone, but the awareness behind the action that matters. In that moment, the individual is no longer rushing through life, but choosing to engage with their environment consciously. As April 23rd arrives, the ritual is often described as a time to reset emotional space. Walking slowly from corner to corner, one is encouraged to reflect inwardly. Each placement of salt becomes a symbolic release. One corner may represent fear, the quiet anxieties that follow a person even in moments of safety. Another corner may represent resentment, emotions tied to memories that have not fully dissolved. Another may reflect exhaustion, not only physical tiredness but deeper mental fatigue that builds over time. And the final corner may represent the absence of gratitude, reminding the heart to reopen itself to appreciation, even in small things. This practice is not about changing the external world, it is about changing perception. When a person engages in such mindful symbolism, the mind slows down. Awareness increases. The home, whether or not anything physically changes, feels different because the individual has changed their relationship with it. They begin to see their surroundings not as passive space, but as part of their emotional experience. After the salt is placed, silence becomes part of the process. The stillness of the night allows reflection without interruption. And when the salt is later removed, it symbolizes release. What is no longer needed is acknowledged and let go. This simple cycle of placing and removing becomes a reminder that nothing meant for peace must be held forever. In truth, the deeper meaning of this practice lies not in the salt or the date, but in the moment of attention it creates. Life often moves without pause, yet healing requires pause. Awareness requires pause, and sometimes even transformation begins with something as small as standing quietly in a corner of one's own life and deciding that something within it is ready to be released. Salt is used as a symbol of purification and intention. Salt is not presented as magic, but as a meaningful tool representing cleansing, protection, and the decision to release negativity. Salt has always been more than a simple mineral placed on a table or used in food. Across many generations in many different lands, people have looked at salt as something quiet yet meaningful. While the modern world often sees only its practical use, older traditions understood that ordinary things can carry deep symbolic value when they are used with intention. In the April 23rd ritual, salt is not treated as magic. It is seen as a symbol of purification, protection, and the conscious desire to remove what feels heavy from the spaces we live in. The meaning of salt begins with its nature. Salt preserves, it keeps things from spoiling too quickly. For centuries before refrigeration existed, salt was used to protect food from decay. Because of this, many people began to associate salt with the idea of guarding what is valuable. Over time, this practical quality became spiritual symbolism. If salt could preserve what nourishes the body, people believed it could also represent preserving peace within the home and within the heart. The physical property became a reminder of an inner truth. Salt also dissolves. When placed in water, it disappears, yet its presence remains. This has made it a powerful symbol for unseen transformation. Sometimes the most important changes in life are not dramatic or visible. They happen silently within the mind. A person may look the same from the outside, yet inside they may have released fear, forgiven pain, or chosen calm over chaos. Salt reflects this kind of change. It reminds us that what cannot always be seen can still be deeply felt. When someone places salt into the corners of a room, the action itself carries meaning. The corners of a home are often forgotten. Most attention goes to what stands in the center, what visitors notice, or what appears important. But corners quietly collect dust and neglect. In the same way, the human mind often stores emotions in hidden places. Old grief, worry, disappointment, and tension can settle in areas of life that are rarely examined. By placing salt there, a person is symbolically bringing awareness to what has been ignored. The salt becomes less about the room and more about the person. What gives the ritual its power is not the substance alone, but the intention behind it. Two people can perform the same action, yet only one may feel its meaning. If someone throws salt carelessly into a corner while distracted, it remains only salt. But if someone pauses, breathes, and places it with the thought of releasing heaviness, then the action becomes a form of meditation. It becomes a message to the subconscious that says, I am ready to create peace where there has been unrest. This is why salt is often seen as a symbol rather than a solution. It does not change life by itself. It cannot erase every problem or remove every burden. But symbols have always helped human beings give shape to invisible feelings. They allow the heart to participate in healing in a way words sometimes cannot. Salt becomes a bridge between the physical world and the inner world. In the end, the true meaning of salt in this ritual is simple. It represents the choice to become aware. It represents the willingness to cleanse not just a room, but the emotional atmosphere that surrounds daily life. And sometimes the smallest grain can remind a person that even small acts, when done with sincerity, can begin a deeper transformation within. April 23rd ritual is about mindfulness, not superstition. The act of placing salt is framed as a conscious, reflective practice to pause, observe, and reset one's inner and outer environment. The idea of timing in human life has always carried a quiet influence over how people think, act, and reflect. Certain dates become symbolic not because the universe changes in a visible way, but because human awareness assigns meaning to them. April 23rd in this context is often described as a moment of reset, a point where individuals are encouraged to observe their surroundings and their inner state with greater attention. The ritual of placing salt in the corners of a home on this day is not about superstition or prediction. It is about creating a structured moment for reflection where action and awareness meet in a simple but meaningful way. Human beings are deeply shaped by their environment. The spaces we live in affect our mood, our thoughts, and even our behavior over time. A cluttered or neglected space can create a subtle sense of unease, while an organized and cared-for environment often supports clarity of mind. Yet beyond physical cleanliness, there is also emotional and psychological space. People carry memories, stress, expectations, and unresolved emotions, and these often influence how they experience their surroundings. The April 23rd ritual uses the idea of the home as a mirror for the inner world. When someone pays attention to their physical space, they are also encouraged to reflect on their internal condition. Corners in a home are often overlooked, and this is what gives them symbolic importance in the ritual. They are not the focus of daily activity. They are not where people gather, eat, or speak. Instead, they remain still, receiving whatever is left behind: dust, silence, and neglect. In a symbolic sense, they represent the unnoticed areas of life. These can be thoughts that are pushed aside, emotions that are not expressed, or experiences that are not fully processed. By bringing attention to the corners, the ritual encourages a person to acknowledge what has been ignored rather than continuing to overlook it. Salt, when used in this practice, serves as a physical anchor for intention. It is simple, accessible, and unassuming, yet its symbolism is layered. It has long been associated with preservation, clarity, and cleansing in various cultural traditions. In the context of this ritual, salt represents the act of setting an intention to release what is heavy. When a person walks slowly through their home and places a small amount of salt in each corner, the movement becomes deliberate. It interrupts automatic thinking. It replaces distraction with presence, even if only for a short time. This act can also be seen as a form of symbolic decluttering. Just as physical cleaning removes dust and disorder, this practice represents the removal of emotional accumulation. Fear, stress, resentment, and fatigue are not physically located in a room, but they can be felt within it. By symbolically assigning these emotions to different corners, a person gives structure to what is otherwise invisible. One corner becomes a reminder of fear, another of emotional burden, another of mental exhaustion, and another of forgotten gratitude. This structure helps the mind process complex feelings in a simplified way. The importance of the ritual is not in expecting external change, but in encouraging internal awareness. When the salt is placed, there is a moment of pause. When it is later removed, there is a sense of closure. This cycle mirrors the natural human need to release and renew. Without such moments, emotional weight can accumulate unnoticed, affecting thoughts and reactions over time. Ultimately, the practice associated with April 23rd is less about tradition and more about attention. It invites a person to slow down and recognize that even small, mindful actions can create a shift in how life is experienced. The salt is not the source of change, awareness is. And sometimes awareness begins in the simplest of gestures carried out quietly in the corners of an ordinary home. Each corner represents emotional release and balance. Fear, resentment, exhaustion, and gratitude are assigned to the four corners, turning the ritual into a structured emotional cleansing exercise. Human life is often shaped by what is visible, but influenced even more by what remains unseen. People tend to focus on actions, possessions, and external events, yet much of their emotional reality is formed in quiet, unnoticed layers of experience. The idea behind the April 23rd salt ritual reflects this understanding in a symbolic way. It suggests that the home is not only a physical shelter, but also a reflection of inner life, where thoughts, emotions, and memories subtly shape the atmosphere over time. Every person carries an internal world filled with movement. Thoughts rise and fall throughout the day, emotions shift without warning, and experiences leave impressions that are not always fully processed. When these impressions are not acknowledged, they do not disappear. Instead, they settle into the background of awareness. Over time, this can create a sense of heaviness or restlessness that is difficult to explain. The ritual of placing salt in the corners of a home is often interpreted as a way of giving form to this invisible accumulation. It transforms an abstract emotional state into a simple physical action that can be observed and reflected upon. The corners of a home are especially significant in this symbolic practice. They are places that rarely receive attention. Furniture is not usually centered there, and daily activity does not focus on them. Because of this, they become a natural symbol for what is neglected in life. Just as corners collect dust without notice, the mind can collect unresolved emotions without awareness. These may include quiet worries that are never spoken, memories that are avoided, or feelings that are pushed aside in order to continue with daily responsibilities. The ritual uses this parallel to encourage awareness of what is often ignored. Salt in this context becomes a tool of intention rather than transformation. It is not believed to have power in itself, but it represents a conscious decision to engage with one's environment differently. The act of taking salt and placing it deliberately in each corner requires presence. It interrupts routine behavior and introduces a moment of reflection. In that moment, a person is no longer simply moving through space, they are actively acknowledging it. This shift from unconscious habit to conscious action is at the heart of the practice. As each corner is approached, it can become a symbolic space for different emotional states. One corner may represent fear, the quiet uncertainty that often lingers beneath surface confidence. Another may represent emotional weight, the accumulation of stress or unresolved experiences. Another may reflect fatigue, not only physical tiredness but also mental exhaustion that builds gradually over time. The final corner may represent absence, specifically the absence of gratitude or appreciation, which often fades when life becomes overwhelming. By assigning meaning in this way, the mind is given a simple structure to process complex feelings. The strength of this ritual lies in its ability to create pause. Modern life often moves quickly, leaving little space for reflection. People respond, react, and continue without fully processing what they feel. A simple practice like this interrupts that pattern. It does not require belief in anything beyond awareness. It only requires willingness to be present in one's surroundings for a few quiet moments. When the salt is later removed, the act symbolizes release. It represents the idea that what has been acknowledged does not need to remain held. Whether or not anything changes physically in the environment, the person has engaged in a symbolic completion of a cycle: recognition, intention, and letting go. In the end, the meaning of the April 23rd ritual is not found in the salt itself or the date on the calendar. It is found in the human need to pause, reflect, and reset. It reminds us that even ordinary spaces can become meaningful when approached with awareness. And even small actions can serve as reminders that inner clarity often begins with simple, deliberate attention to the world we live in. True transformation begins with awareness and small actions. The core message is that real change doesn't require grand efforts. Simple, mindful actions in everyday spaces can shift mindset and emotional energy. Across many traditions, both ancient and modern, human beings have tried to understand the invisible forces that shape their emotions, their decisions, and the atmosphere of their daily lives. While science explains much of the physical world, people have always used symbolism to express what cannot easily be measured. The April 23rd salt ritual belongs to this symbolic way of thinking. It is not about predicting outcomes or controlling fate, but about creating a moment of awareness where a person becomes more conscious of their inner and outer environment at the same time. Life often feels like a continuous flow of activity where one responsibility follows another without pause. In this constant movement, emotional experiences accumulate quietly. A conversation that caused stress, a memory that brought sadness, a worry about the future, or even small disappointments can leave impressions that are not fully processed. Over time, these impressions blend together and create a background feeling that is difficult to describe but easy to feel. This is where symbolic practices become meaningful. They provide a structured way to pause and acknowledge what is usually ignored. The idea of placing salt in the corners of a home is rooted in this need for structured reflection. A home is more than a physical space, it is a living environment shaped by the energy of those who inhabit it. Every routine, every emotion, and every interaction leaves a subtle imprint. While this cannot be seen directly, it can be experienced in the overall feeling of the space. Some days a home feels light and calm, while on other days it may feel heavy or restless, even if nothing visibly has changed. The ritual uses this observation as a starting point for awareness. Corners play a particularly important symbolic role in this practice. They are the least active parts of a room, often overlooked in daily cleaning and attention. Because of this neglect, they represent the parts of life that are also overlooked: emotions not expressed, thoughts not examined, or experiences not fully understood. When a person walks toward each corner with intention, it becomes a metaphor for turning attention toward areas of life that are usually avoided. This simple movement creates a shift from automatic living to mindful presence. Salt is used because of its long-standing symbolic association with purity and preservation. In this ritual, it does not act as a force of change by itself. Instead, it represents intention. The act of holding salt, walking slowly, and placing it deliberately encourages a break from mental distraction. Each placement becomes a quiet acknowledgement. Something is being recognized and mentally set aside. One corner may symbolize emotional fatigue, another unresolved thoughts, another quiet fear, and another the absence of appreciation. These associations are not fixed rules but flexible reflections of personal awareness. The deeper value of the ritual lies in its psychological effect rather than any external outcome. When a person engages in a symbolic act with full attention, the mind naturally slows down. Awareness increases. The environment feels different not because it has physically changed but because perception has shifted. This change in perception is often the first step toward emotional clarity. Removing the salt later continues the symbolic cycle. It represents release, closure, and the acknowledgement that what has been observed does not need to remain carried. This final step reinforces the idea that awareness without attachment is enough to begin letting go. The process becomes complete not through physical transformation but through mental recognition. In essence, the April 23rd salt ritual reflects a timeless human understanding that healing and clarity often begin with attention. It is a reminder that even the simplest actions, when performed with awareness, can help a person reconnect with their environment and themselves. In a world filled with constant noise, such moments of intentional stillness offer a way to reset perception, bringing balance not through external change but through inner awareness.